Welcome to tonight's tale, on to fall asleep too. Before we begin, if you enjoy stories that take you into the shadows, stories that wrap around your mind and do not let go, make sure you like this video and subscribe. It helps us bring you more stories, and it makes sure you don't miss what's coming next. Now, close your eyes and listen closely. It was supposed to be an ordinary day for Daniel Reeves. He had woken up late, scrambled to get ready for work, and was halfway through burning his tongue on a too-hot coffee when his phone buzzed with an email notification. It simply read, "You've been selected." He nearly ignored it. Spam, obviously. But something about it, the stark black and white font, the absence of any logos or flashy images, made him pause. Curiosity was dangerous, and Daniel knew that. Yet, against his better judgment, he clicked. The email was bare, a single sentence in bold type. Asterisk, "We've been watching you. Tonight, at 11:11 p.m., you will find the black envelope under your door. Do not open it until you are alone. No signature, no attachments. Not even a sender name, just a strange symbol, a triangle with an eye at its center, drawn in thick, jagged lines." Daniel chuckled nervously and closed the email. Weird internet prank. Still, that symbol stayed in his mind all day. By the time night fell, Daniel had forgotten about it. At least, he thought he had. He was halfway through a late-night TV binge when he heard something faint, a whisper of paper sliding against the floor. Heart thudding, he walked to his apartment door. There it was, a black envelope. It wasn't like anything he'd seen before. The paper was heavy, smooth, and cold to the touch. The seal wasn't wax. It was a small silver disc, etched with the same triangle and die symbol from the email. Daniel stood frozen for a long time. He should throw it away. He should laugh, go back to the couch, forget any of this happened. But when he picked it up, his fingers trembled. He waited until the clock on his microwave read 11:11. Then, slowly, he broke the seal. Inside was a single card. On one side, an address written in perfect, mechanical handwriting. On the other, just 2 words, "We know." Daniel didn't know what they could possibly know. But the longer he stared at those words, the more his stomach knotted. They knew something. Something they shouldn't. He thought about calling the police. But how would that go? "Hello. Yes, someone sent me a creepy letter, and now I think there's a secret society tracking me." They'd laugh, maybe take the card, then toss it in a drawer. Still, something compelled him to go to the address, just to see. It was in the older part of the city, where the streets narrowed into shadow and the air smelled faintly of damp stone. The building was a tall, windowless structure of blackened brick. It had no sign, no number, only a single door with a brass handle. When Daniel reached for it, it opened before his fingers touched the metal. A man in a black suit stood there. His face was pale, almost waxy, and his eyes didn't seem to blink. "Mr. Reeves," the man said, though Daniel had never given his name. "We've been expecting you." Inside, the building was silent, except for the faint echo of footsteps. The walls were lined with tall, unmarked doors. Every corridor looked the same, like a maze designed to disorient. Daniel followed the suited man deeper inside, his own footsteps muffled on the thick carpet. They entered a vast circular room. The ceiling rose into darkness. At the center stood a long table, and around it sat 12 figures in hooded black robes. Only their hands were visible, pale, thin, and perfectly still. One of them spoke, the voice low and heavy, like it came from somewhere deep underground. "Mr. Reeves, you have been chosen because you are one of us, whether you accept it or not." Daniel's mouth went dry. "I think you've got the wrong person," he managed. But the figure continued, as if he hadn't spoken. "You will carry out a task for us. Refuse, and you will lose everything." Another figure slid something across the table. A small, black box. The lid opened to reveal a silver key, its bow carved into the shape of the triangulin die. "You will go to the place this key unlocks," the voice said. "You will take what you find there and bring it to us. Do not look inside it. Do not speak of it. Do not fail." Daniel stared at the key. Something inside him screamed to run, but his hands moved on their own, taking it. Somewhere high above, in the darkness, something shifted. A faint scraping sound, like claws against stone. Before he could speak, the suited man was at his side again, guiding him back through the endless corridors. When they reached the street, Daniel found himself alone. The building behind him was gone. In its place was an empty lot. The key was still in his hand, and when he looked at it, he realized it was warm now, pulsing faintly like a heartbeat. From somewhere far away, he thought he heard a whisper. It was saying his name. Before we continue tonight's unsettling journey into the shadows of the Illuminati, I want to remain settled. If you are enjoying exploring our chilling tales that blur the line between reality and nightmare, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel. It helps us keep the stories flowing, and it ensures you will never miss the next haunting episode. Now, settle in, let your breathing slow, and allow the darkness to seep in as we continue our descent. The city had grown restless. It was not something you could measure by crime statistics or political reports, but by the way the air felt heavier, as though pressing down on the shoulders of everyone who walked its streets. The whispers about the Illuminati were no longer just fringe talk reserved for dimly lit bars or anonymous online forums. They were now spoken in the queue at coffee shops, murmured between commuters on the late-night train, and passed quietly between friends in hushed, urgent tones. Mara had begun noticing symbols in places she had never seen them before. At first, she thought her mind was playing tricks on heart triangles carved subtly into the brickwork of old buildings, an eye etched faintly into a stained shop window, an unmarked black van parked in the same spot for 3 consecutive nights. But when she pointed them out to her friend Callum, he stiffened and told her not to speak of such things so openly. Her dreams had changed too. They were no longer random flickers of subconscious thought. They had become vivid, structured visions, always beginning in a large, candlelit hall where hooded figures stood in perfect symmetry. Each figure turned toward her in unison, and the air would thicken until her lungs burned. One figure, taller than the rest, would step forward, extend a hand, and whisper her name. The moment she reached out to take it, she would wake, heart pounding and ears ringing. It was after one of these dreams that she awoke to find an envelope slid under her apartment door. No name, no return address, just her apartment number in a blocky, mechanical typeface. Inside was a single black card, matte to the touch, with a small, gold-embossed triangle in the center. Beneath it, 3 words were printed in precise serif font. "We have chosen." Mara's hands shook as she turned the card over. On the back was a time and an address she did not recognize, but something about it felt inevitable. Like she had been walking toward this moment her entire life. That night, rain slicked the streets in a sheen of liquid shadow. As she made her way to the address, it was a building she would have passed 100 times without noticing, narrow facade wedged between 2 larger, more imposing structures, revealing a corridor lined with flickering wall sconces. She stepped inside, her pulse thudding in her ears. The walls seemed to breathe, their shadows shifting like figures trying to escape their flat prison. At the end of the corridor stood a man in a dark suit, his face obscured by a mask shaped like a human skull. He did not speak, but instead extended an arm toward a spiral staircase descending into darkness. The further she went down, the more the air changed. It smelled faintly of burning incense, but beneath that, something older, like the scent of damp stone and forgotten tombs. When she reached the bottom, she found herself in a cavernous, underground chamber. The ceiling was so high that it vanished into shadows, and in the center of the room stood a massive circular table made of black marble. Around it, 12 figures in hooded robes sat in perfect silence. At the far end, on a slightly raised dais, sat the 13th, a tall figure with a golden mask fashioned in the shape of an eye. The sound of Mara's footsteps echoed unnaturally loud as she was led to the center of the room. The masked leader spoke first. His voice was deep, resonant, and carried the weight of something ancient. You have been brought here because the world is about to change. We are its architects. And you, Mara, will decide which version of it survives. Her mouth went dry. I do not understand, she managed to say. You will, the leader replied, and the other robed figures began to hum in unison, low. The marble floor beneath her feet shifted, forming intricate symbols that glowed faintly. It was then she realized she had seen these same patterns in her dreams. The leader reached into his robe and produced a small, intricately carved box. He placed it on the table and slid it toward her. Inside is the key to everything. But once you open it, there is no turning back. Her hand hovered over the box, her reflection warped in its polished surface. The hum grew louder. The shadows in the chamber deepened, and somewhere, far above them, a thunderclap rolled through the night. Her fingertips brushed the lid. If you are new to the channel, welcome. We share stories designed to both unnerve and fascinate you until your eyes grow heavy and sleep takes over. If you are enjoying the stories thus far, please remember to like this video and subscribe to our channel so you do not miss any of our future tales. Now, settle in, relax, and prepare yourself for the final chapter of this unsettling journey. The storm over the city had intensified. From the top floor of the abandoned library, where Ilara now hid, the glass windows rattled under the pressure of the wind. Sheets of rain blurred the streets below into dark, moving shadows. Somewhere out there, the cloaked figures were hunting her. She could feel it, like a static charge in the air, pressing against her skin. On the table in front of her lay the ancient manuscript, its yellowed pages seeming to pulse faintly, as if the ink itself were alive. The diagrams of circles, triangles, and the ever-present, all-seeing eye stared back at her, unwavering. In her mind, she replayed the moment she had pulled the book from its hidden compartment in the cathedral. The instant she had touched it, the temperature around her had dropped, and a voice had whispered something she could not understand. That voice had followed her ever since. Downstairs, the sound of footsteps echoed through the empty library. They were slow and deliberate, each one accompanied by the creak of the warped floorboards. Ilara backed away from the table, her breathing shallow. She knew it was not the wind. She knew they had found her. From the shadows between the bookshelves emerged a tall man dressed in a black robe, the hood pulled low over his face. His gloved hand rested on the end of a long, silver-tipped cane. Behind him, two more figures stepped into view, their faces covered by golden masks that caught the dim light and reflected it like the eyes of predators. None of them spoke. They simply watched her, waiting. "You have something that belongs to us," the man with the cane said at last. His voice, deep and steady, like a stone sinking into water. Ilara felt the vibration of it in her bones. "You should not have opened it." Her fingers tightened around the edge of the table. "What is it?" she demanded. "What is this book?" The masked figures moved forward, but the man with a cane lifted a hand, stopping them. "It is a map," he said, "but not of land or sea. It is a map of power. Power older than this city, older than the language you speak. It shows where the eye rests and how to awaken it. And now that you have seen it, you are part of it." Lightning flashed, illuminating the glass dome above them. For a moment, Ilara thought she saw more than 3 figures in the room. Dozens of shapes seemed to press against the edges of her vision, their forms outlined in the lightning's glow. But when the darkness returned, they were gone. The man with the cane extended his arm toward her. "Give it to me," he said, "and you will be spared." Ilara hesitated. Something inside her screamed not to trust him. The whispers from the book had grown louder since his arrival, speaking her name over and over in a rhythm that matched her heartbeat. She could not make out the words, but they felt urgent, insistent. Instead of handing the book over, she stepped backward toward the spiral staircase that led deeper into the building. The man tilted his head slightly, as if amused, and lowered his hand. "So be it." The lights above flickered violently, then went out completely, leaving only the sound of rain and the faint glow from the manuscript in her arms. She ran. Her footsteps echoed wildly as she descended into the lower levels. She had no plan other than to keep moving. The air grew damp and cold as she entered the basement. The smell of mildew and dust filled her nose. Shelves of ancient volumes surrounded her, their spines cracked and titles worn away. Somewhere in the dark, water dripped steadily, each drop falling into what sounded like a deep pool. She stopped when she saw the doorway at the far end of the hall. It had not been there before. The frame was carved from black stone, and within it shimmered a faint light, like moonlight reflected on water. The whispers in her head grew so loud they almost became a scream, yet her body moved forward without her permission. When she stepped through the doorway, the world changed. The air felt heavier, pressing down on her chest. The walls stretched upward endlessly, covered in symbols that moved like living things. At the center of the vast chamber stood a monolithic statue of the all-seeing eye, carved from a single slab of obsidian. Its surface gleamed, and its gaze seemed to follow her. She could feel them enter the room behind her. The robed man and his masked companions walked in silently, their steps making no sound on the black stone floor. The man approached the statue and placed his palm against it. The moment he did, the chamber filled with a deep, resonant hum. "You cannot stop it now," he said, without turning toward her. "You are bound to it, as we all are." The statue's eye began to glow, a bright, blinding white that forced Ilara to shield her face. The hum became a roar, and she felt herself being pulled forward, as though the light itself was dragging her in. She fought to hold her ground, her feet sliding across the floor, and then she saw the truth. Within the light were faces, thousands of them, screaming soundlessly, their eyes wide with terror. They reached for her with translucent hands, begging to be pulled free. But before she could react, the force yanked her into the light completely. The library was gone. The city was gone. She stood in a vast void, surrounded by nothing but the endless gaze of the eye. The voices whispered in unison, each word falling into her mind like drops of ink into water. "You are ours."